Parks and Rec meeting ran a little over. This committee of the whole meeting to discuss the 2023 budget. Tonight's meeting is going to be focusing on public safety, so it'll be police and fire today, and we'll take it from there. Start with fire. You want to go ahead? Okay.
All right, I besides the paperwork you got from Tim, I also gave you a handout that we'll reference as we go through this. So I guess starting from the very first page, a lot of the stuff on the very first page really we've got no control over. The overtime we set, even though our overtime this year is like 200 and I don't know what it's at right now, 247,000. That has a lot to do with missing, not having two people for about half the year and then finishing that other missing person towards the end of August. So after looking at it, what you have in there, that extra 6,360 is just taking into consideration the increase in the collective bargaining agreement. The rest of it, the ambulance transfer pay, obviously you can see that we took 4,000 off of there. We do fewer and fewer of these interfacility transfers, so there's no need to have that money in there. The ambulance pay, you can see, went up to 5,500. Again, contractual bargaining agreement with the union. And the critical pay, same thing. Those are bumps in wages through the collective bargaining agreement. The rest of that is all, Tim fills all that in, and I'm sure that runs off of our collective bargaining agreement also. So, and it makes sense because they got a 3% raise, and you can see on the bottom it was a 3% increase with the wages and benefits. So, any questions on that page? Okay. Second page. I'll just start at the top. And how I figure this is, so through June, I take what we've used so far through the year, divide it by 6. That gives me a monthly cost, and I times it by 12, and that's my estimate for what we would use in the upcoming year. So through June, 6 months. That's how whatever we've used at that point, divide by 6 because of the 6 months, and then times it by 12 for 2023. We took 1,100 off of office supply. We hadn't used that much to that point, so that was the 1,100 reduction. Postage I left the same because we were running about on track for that. $930 decrease on copying costs, again, using that same formula. Equipment maintenance, using that formula, a $380 increase. Building maintenance, I know we got a brand new station, but our station 2 is still old, and now we have a larger amount of area in our existing apparatus bay and parts of it, so I just left it at 22, no increase. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Tim can correct me, but if at the end of the year we got money left in there, it just rolls back into the general fund, correct? So,
it all depends. If it's the fire department, it does. If it's the EMS side,
that
goes into that special revenue, and that's
Yep.
what we use to fill any gaps in like financing of like
Right.
EMS vehicles and stuff.
Small tools and equipment, there's a reduction again because of the formula. Ambulance supplies, you can see is 10,000. You know, that's an estimated guess. I wouldn't be afraid to put even more on there. Our cost of ambulance supplies, you know, I'm sure you know it or you've heard it, is jumped a lot. So, but using the formula so far this year, 10,000 more into there because of the cost of that. And a good example of that is we used to get a case of gloves for $16, and now we pay $68 for a case of gloves. That's the increase of supplies for it. So, again, kind of out of our control. The next 4, telephone, water and light, heating, and internet, are all taken out of that formula. That was the cost to date. Those increases are really out of our hands. That's our cost through those 4 suppliers. The subscriptions and membership is a large increase, the 8,500, and that is because this year we are due for our CAS reaccreditation. That happens every 3 years, and it costs us $8,500 for that CAS reaccreditation. Again, next year that won't be in there, so that would be out of there. But every 3 is when we see that. Training and education, although it pains me to take that out of there, I took $725 out of it. I really believe that training and education is the basis for, you know, why the ambulance service and our firefighters are as great as they are. So, but to be responsible and help, we took some money out of there. The educational reimbursement, you can see there's a $3,000 increase. That's a collective bargaining agreement. It used to be we could see how many people were going to use it, and there was a certain amount that each person could use. But with the last collective bargaining agreement, it was bargained that even if one person used it, they could use up to that $5,000 in a year's time. So that's why that $5,000's in there. Our image trend increased $425. This is a software we use for all of our personal care reports, for all our training and education within the department, for all our fire reports. It's really the heart and soul of our software. That is a direct quote for 2023. So again, really don't have much control over it, but they are a great service. Ambulance vehicles, this is the maintenance cost form. You can see I took $2,500 off of there, and again, using that formula, we were at that point. We didn't, if we stay true to that formula and our maintenance, now we've got 2 newer rigs, and we'll be getting a 3rd in 2024. That's a true cost that we recognize this year. Fire department vehicles, 6120. Again, that is taken out of that formula. We've used that much to date. That's the account we use for maintenance and care of all those vehicles. One of the biggest items that comes out of that is they have to have a DOT inspection every year, and that usually generates a pretty large cost. At that same point, they're finding, you know, what's wrong with the vehicle, or maybe doing some preventive maintenance. If we can take care of this now, it'll cost less because we've already got the truck over there, and we already got that portion of the truck tore apart. So the clothing allowance and uniforms are, again, contracted issues, so we really don't have any control over the cost of that. First responder stipend, that is the money that's negotiated in the contracts with our surrounding areas for our first responders. The reason that's doubled is we took on those 3 new areas. That is I know it looks like it's a doubled, but I'll tell you that is money well worth it. We don't have to send third persons out in a lot of instances sometimes because we got good first responder units out there. Those people are saving lives, and I think that's money well spent. Laundry and dry cleaning, I think the reason it was high last year was that was our first year we were going to pay to launder and dry clean all the uniforms for the fire department. And through this year, after using it, we realized that it wasn't going to cost as much as what was projected, so that's that decrease there. Preventive maintenance, that cost is, again, realized because of the cost of, the increasing cost of parts and maintenance over the last year or so. The physicals, if you open that packet I gave you, the very first sheet in there has MedCompass on there. While I was at the Winter in Service for the State Chiefs, I talked to this company. They were there. They will come in and do all the physicals just like we had done over the last few years through Saints and Aspirus at about, almost a third of the cost. They'll come to the station so that the logistical nightmare we have of sending members to either Stevens Point or Aspirus twice to get everything accomplished isn't going to happen. They'll come in, they'll spend 1 day at the station, get each crew. If there's chest x-rays to be done, they could do that. They'll do the autometrics, they'll do the pulmonary function, EKGs. A couple of the benefits that we get with those are also, we have to pay to use a machine to do a fit test, which is they fit the masks that each firefighter uses. That has to be done annually. They'll do that as part of that cost. And they'll also do a fit test of our N95s, which are the masks we use for airborne contaminants. That has to be done also annually. They'll do those 2 for that same cost. Last year we spent, I think it's $24,000 for those physicals. This year we're looking at $14,000 savings there. I know that's not in the budget you received, but this is something that's happened within the last month or so. We negotiated or talked with them, with HR and ourselves, and decided that this was fire prevention. The fire prevention, the extra 1,000 in there is strictly because last year and the year before, we were trialing a new inspection software, which saves us a ton of time because of the way this. Now we need to be able to have a of it. $20 is strictly, you know, the increase in cost for fire prevention or public education material, the increase to have, you know, things printed and stuff like that. So, and then the property and auto insurance is something that get, you know, like anything else, we don't have a choice over. Any questions on any of that? Okay. So then, on to fire department outlay. Now, that handout I gave you, the sheets that follow are gonna help to explain each of these categories we're gonna talk about, so. You can see in station number 1 for 2023, we've got $17,800. In station 2 is $28,740 for a total of $46,540. These are usually large maintenance items that aren't annually, but something that comes up. So at station 1 and station 2, we did write an AFG grant. We're still waiting to find out if we received it or not, for replacement of the existing exhaust gas collection system. So well, we hooked our trucks to make sure we don't have that exhaust inside the station. If that grant would come through, this item could go by the wayside. We wouldn't even need the money that's being asked here, the $8,700. But if not, we need to have it in there because right now we've got some drops that connect to the trucks that aren't even working, and we didn't see a reason to fix them, so we moved one from a place we're not using it over, just so we could continue to use it safely, and wait until we find out if we got that grant or the budget in 2023 to be able to repair these. So that $8,700 is actually split between the two. I think it's $3,700 for station 2 and $5,000 for station 1, and that's just for the repairs for the existing system. The carpet replacement at station 2, this was put in probably about 10 years ago, and it was kind of a quick fix to try to cover up some asbestos tile. That carpeting is in sad disrepair. It's very worn. We can't even have a professional come over and clean it anymore because it's so stained. So we got a quote for a different type of flooring, probably like a laminate or something like that, to try to cover that, and that quote was $5,000. The leak in the brick in the north stairwell at station 2, there's water actually leaking in from the vertical windows through the block in there. That's if we don't do something with it, you know, eventually it's going to start erode away the block inside. It's coming through the brick into the block, which is structural, and then we're going to have a structural compromise. So to bring somebody in to fix that block and then do a tuck point on the brick was $4,000 quote. The station 2 apparatus, HVAC, for the last year and a half or 2 years, we've probably got Ron's refrigeration over there at least 3 times a month. That existing apparatus bay heater is very old, and it doesn't ignite right. They can't get the parts for it. They keep on trying to cobble something together. It was actually caught twice last year with a little minor explosion because it builds up gas, and it's an old heater, and it doesn't have the ability to close off the gas valve on it because it's that old. It doesn't have that technology. And besides that, if that heater is left like that, it starts to get cold out there, and the ambulances that are housed over there have drugs inside that are very temperature sensitive. So when it gets below a certain temperature, we got to throw those drugs out because we can't ensure that they were not compromised by the temperature change. So we had them give us a quote, and $14,540 would be to replace that heater in that bay area. There's a roof leak over the workbench there. It's a very small, like outpost or like outcrop. It's a very small roof. If we don't do something with it, then the plywood's gonna start degrading underneath there, and that's a $3,000 roof change. And then security system at Station 1. With the new station, our parking lot is much farther out. Even at night, the members are way in the back, and if somebody comes to that front door, you could be walking out to somebody that's got a gun or whatever. That security system was, when we built the station, we put all the chases in to be able to just pull the wiring for it. It's probably one of the only 24-hour locations in the city that doesn't have a security camera on it. So that camera system is, I believe it's $7,000 something. It is $7,050. It's cheaper because we did the chase work while we were doing the remodel. And then the last thing in the department outlay is probably 20 years ago or so, we wrote a grant for workout equipment for Station 1. Nothing's been done with them other than the maintenance that we get done every year at Brings, which is a line item in our budget. But they are, in the last year now, we've had 2 of them fail to the point where they're either not working completely or components of them don't work and they can't get parts for them anymore. So instead of replacing it all, we're gonna try to look at replacing 2 pieces of it, this year, and try to piecemeal it out over a time frame so that even in the future, it's not one big cost item again. So 1 elliptical and 1 treadmill, $2,700 for the elliptical and $3,100 for a treadmill. Pretty important. I think we want a healthy, well-maintained workforce that can actually do the physical job that is required of them, besides the fact that cardiac heart attacks is like one of the top 2 or 3 killers of firefighters in our industry. So if we can prevent it, I think it's well worth it. So that total is $46,540 for outlay for the fire department. I threw something on there at the underneath there, Station 2 gender neutral renovation. That cost, if you remember, was $125,000, and we took it out of the scope of the Station 1 remodel because of the cost increase. As you read through there, we came in under budget on that to the tune of, we believe it's going to be around $80,000 between what we were what we saved on contingency, what Myron has still got some money that they didn't use that was part of the project that will be coming back, and today we received our Focus on Energy check, which was $4,100 or something like that. I guess what I'm asking is, if you would consider, is that $80,000 is set in there. I know there's ARPA funds, and I know you guys are thinking about what we're going to do with ARPA funds. That $40,000 or $45,000 we'd need on top of that $80,000, I think we could get that project done. Realize that we've already paid for the prints for it when we did the original project, so we wouldn't need that to be done, and we wouldn't need to have 5 Bugles or Myron or any project manager. I think if Mike Lasitz and I didn't prove to you guys that we could be a project manager, I think we failed miserably, because we did a pretty good job. I thought Mike did a great job on that station remodel. So I guess I threw that on there as a consideration for you. That's a project that was identified as necessary or very needing in the city, and here's an opportunity for 60 to 75% of it to already be there, and we know we do have ARPA funds, and we're not asking for a lot of it, just for 40,000 or whatever it's going to take. Any questions on that before we move to the fire equipment outlay? All right, fire equipment outlay. These are identified usually through our 20-year projection, or in this case, the large diameter hose that's on there was identified through our hose testing last year at the end in October. in the spring, I mean. During that, we had 5 large diameter links, 100-foot links of LDH that went bad, and seriously bad, to the point where they're like a sprinkler when we're trying to use them. It leaves for, water pressure decrease to the engines to try to supply water, but most importantly is during the winter months, it leaves an ice skate and rink out there that, is unsafe scene. It's unsafe for citizens after we leave there, and if it's in the street, it's unsafe for traffic also, so that's $3,500. Every year, we have on our replacement schedule turnout clothing, because NFPA says we have to change it out every 10 years. So we've split it up and tried to ease that cost. Instead of getting, 36 sets in 1 year, we get anywhere from 3 to 6 sets a year split out on, when it was last purchased. We're up for 4 sets this year, and that's $10,000. And then our Rescue 42 struts for vehicle extrication, nearly 15 years, they're exposed to a lot of chemicals and a lot of things out on the scene. The light doesn't, or the sunlight doesn't do much for them either, because they're fiberglass, and they're starting to show signs of degradation and really need to be replaced, and those were $6,000. So that fire equipment outlay was $19,500. Any questions on that? And then our ambulance outlay. So this is just like the fire equipment, but now this is on the EMS side. Our suction units are up for replacement. They're getting extremely old. They're not that expensive, but we got to replace all 5 of them when we do it, so that's a $6,500 cost. Stair chairs, these things are lifesavers when we talk about injuries. If you look at our back injuries and muscle strains and sprains from when we used to put people on cots and carry them up and down stairs, these things have probably saved more than what their cost is over the last 5 to 7 years that we've had them. We got 2 of them that are due. What's nice about even the newer ones is they're going to save on strains and sprains even more, because right now there's like little tracks on them and it still takes muscle and lifting. They're now motorized to the point where you can actually roll them up a stairs with just controlling them and guiding them, and also rolling them downstairs and control and guide them. So 2 of those are $18,000. And then the last one there, I had a ventilator into this budget. I've talked with Tim already and the mayor, and we received our flex grant. We didn't receive what we put in for it, but nobody did. There was, they had 16 million to give away, and there was like 60-some million requested. We did receive 18,000 in our flex grant. We had identified that for a Lucas device, and then in the budget, I had 20,000 in for a ventilator. Jason Joling, our division chief, or my deputy chief, and he takes care of our EMS, got a phone call from the place we were getting the vent from. They got a special going in October. He said if we wanted to order that, we could save $4,000 on that vent and get it for $16,000. So I asked Tim if we could switch the 2 out, put the Lucas device in the budget at $18,000, which is $2,000 less than the vent, and we're going to pick the vent up for $16,000 using our flex grant. So I guess, I know that's in here as $20,000. Long story short, I guess I'm asking for $18,000 for a Lucas. That Lucas device will be the 3rd one. We have 3 frontline ambulances, Med 1, Med 2, and Med 3. Right now, Med 1 and Med 2 are the only ones carrying it. This would give us the opportunity to make sure all 3 of our frontline ambulances have a Lucas device, so that when Med 3 or Med 1 are out, or Med 2, there's another ambulance that has that ability to be able to have a Lucas device in it. So total ambulance outlay, $44,500. The last pieces of paper I gave you in that is our 20-year projection. I know you guys are interested and more interested than I can remember of a council being involved with the budget, but so that you can get an idea. We've projected out in just about every category at the fire department, the fire, the EMS, our special ops, a 20-year budget and replacement schedule. So it's something that I use as a tool to be able to know what I have to, what's coming up in the years to come. And it's something that I guess you guys can also, I've sent this to Tim already, I think, electronically, so he has it also, so. Any questions on the budget or what I went through here?
Edric?
Thank you. I just have a few questions. Earlier this spring, you had saved quite a bit of money, but ordering from, I believe it was either Port or Nakusa.
Picking up some of their used equipment.
Yeah. Now, you said that on a lot of these you had taken the first 6 months and then divided that up. Was that accounted for, the good deals that we got back then?
Well, that was, what did we use for that now? That was an opportunity because that was a one-time shot. I mean, they were getting rid of it, and I thought we used something for that. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, the amount that we got from Nakusa for their equipment, we utilized for another purpose, I do believe. I'm trying to think what that was. Right.
Oh, I know what it was. It was we were
November and December.
Yep.
Run charges that were
Right.
outside the original contract, they reimbursed us for, and we used that to buy some EMS equipment from them. You know, that was, I can't remember the exact pieces of equipment, but they were former ambulance service. So we bought their used equipment, and it was in good shape, and so then we got a deal compared to what we had bought it.
So it was money that we were charging them for covering their ambulance service during November and December, or I think it was even October. Every time we would have to cover that and we'd get an ambulance call, we had a charge on there. And that money that was made during that was enough to cover that. So really, that didn't come out of the budget at all.
Okay, was that accounted for in any way? Because obviously we got the product.
Accounted for how?
Okay, you're saying that what you did was you took the first 6 months and you divided that by 6, and then to come up with your budget for next year. That makes a lot of sense. I'm just making sure that the equipment that we had gotten at a good deal, which will have to be replaced, obviously, if that was accounted for or not.
Not in those figures, because those figures are used for things like our ambulance supplies and things like that. That directly came out of the money that we made off of those cover charges. So that was money that was never even in last year's budget, and we used it, so it really didn't play a part of really last year's budget. I don't even know if we used it all. I think there was some left over even.
I think what he talks about is like using 6 months, he's talking about his operating expenditures, which are
Right.
reoccurring annual expenditures, and I think that's where he's looking at like his ambulance supplies, saying, okay, here's my 6 month, here's where I'm at, projecting it out to kind of guide his budget process. With the money we received from Nakusa, those are for capital items, and those are one-time expenditures or every 3 to 5 years, depending on the life expectancy of the equipment. So it's not an annual expense, it's more of a, expected useful life. You know what I'm trying to say? So if we get a fibrillator, those last 5 years,
Yeah,
10 years.
they're actually in here, so.
So we purchased that type of equipment, so it's not an annual expense. It's more of like just those funds were used to supplement, what we would normally purchase out of our equipment replacement fund and not our operating budget.
Oh, okay. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Tim referred to earlier too about like money that doesn't get used out of the EMS stays into that account. A lot of the things that come in and form those budgets can only be used on the EMS side. So that's where a lot of that money comes from when we talk about like replacing life packs, which are our defibrillators and things like that. That comes out of those accounts.
Did you have something, Matt? Did you have something, Matt? Shane?
I guess I just thought of this after our last finance meeting. We know we're a $500,000 short. In this budget includes the 3 additional firefighters, but we did not adjust the overtime. You know, if there's gonna be a savings of approximately, could be $100,000 in overtime, you know, there's potentially $100,000 we could take out of the overtime budget, which will make us that much closer to closing that gap of that $500,000. I didn't think of it till the other night, sitting around thinking about budgets, that, you know, there's $100,000 there potentially.
Tim, didn't you take that out with the,
The amount included in the budget, if you look on, oh my gosh, I don't even have it here. In the comparative budget, there's a 12th tier of 197,000 and change. That includes, that's the net cost. And what that includes is the cost for 3 firefighters, less overtime savings, plus holiday pay and other stipend type pay.
So this number is incorrect?
No, in the comparative budget. The departmental budget is just the status quo, but in the comparative budget, it's accounted for, the 3 fighters, the net cost is accounted for in there. So it's 197,656 is included in the budget as a 12th tier. And that includes an estimated cost of 3 firefighters at the cost of $274,821, less overtime savings of $82,589, holiday pay and critical care pay of roughly $5,500, which gets you to the net cost of $197. That's included into the budget summary.
Tim, do you have a page number that we can reference?
Page 12, and you'll see a 12th tier net cost of 197 in the comparative budget summary. Well, the departmental summary of what was submitted was based on what the current staffing levels are until the council approves the additional hiring of the firefighters. But in the summary, I accounted for that, you know, possible contingency. 80,000. Right, and then that would drop the overtime number in the departmental summary from 147,610 to 80,000.
and is that a conservative number, Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really truly believe that it's gonna be a less of a number than that. I mean, as I look at staffing levels, once we get our safer grant people, you know, we start a day at 13 then. We allow 2 off, that leaves us 11. Our minimum staffing is 9. Even if a battalion chief takes off, which he's not on the vacation schedule, that still leaves 1 person above our minimum staffing. So even if a person calls in sick, besides the battalion chief being off, we still aren't hiring anybody back for a 24-hour day. There's a good level in there that I can really see that about the only thing we'd be hiring back for is if we had like 2 FMLAs, you know, on a crew, or for emergencies like fires, or we got to call somebody back for, you know, a couple hours because we got so many people out. But those are going to be less because we've got more numbers that we won't fall below that 5 all the time. So I fully understand the conservacy of it because we're going in a whole different world than what we're used to. But I think that number could be even less than that.
I thought I found a 20% smoking gun, so I didn't.
Patrick?
Under the projection cost for the 20-year projections, it shows that this year we're rather low compared to next year. You have it in 312,000 for the med unit and 5,000 for the infusion pump. And then after that, it looks like we're still add about $80,000 for a couple of years, and then we have another real big year. Is there any way that we can split that out across years, or I'm just trying to figure out what the best way to do that is, because that's a pretty big increase from this year.
Are
to
you in
next.
the EMS side? Is that what you're looking
Yeah.
at, Patrick?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, realize the med units are money we put away every single year. Tim, what is it? I don't know how much we put away every year, but how much?
Approximately 57,000.
That 312 for that med unit, you know, I'll tell you right now that if you look at med 3, we probably paid, you know, 170,000, 180,000 for that. The one we received for med 2 was, don't quote me on that one, it was like 200 and something, but our last one was 276. That number there, that 312 is, we've already paid for that chassis because we had to get that chassis in the queue. That's a quote for that ambulance, 312. That's the cost that keeps rising, you know, of what it costs us for that. And we couldn't hardly go more than what we already do. I mean, it's 12 years, every 12 years, you know, every 3 years we're buying it, but an ambulance is in service for 12 years. We start hitting 270, 300,000 on some of them, you know, so we can't hardly extend those out. The life packs, yeah, they're expensive, that's for sure. We can look at moving stuff around. I think our problem is we've got ourselves in a kind of in a hole here by always trying to push things back and push things back. I mean, good example is our ladder truck. It was due 6 or 8 years ago to be replaced, and we keep pushing it back. And it's okay because we keep getting somebody to look at it from Red Power Diesel, and they keep saying you got 3 more years, you got 5 more years, and it's because we take good care of it. But you know, eventually, things like that are going to have to get replaced also. You know, so. I mean, that's a 1993, so that's 29 years old.
Jay?
So, first of all, Tim, did you say that 57,000 for the ambulance every year? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, it's 57,500 goes into the ambulance replacement account each year.
Okay, so by the time we get to that, if you replace them every 3 years, you should have a pretty sizable amount of money set aside.
Right. Plus, you know, whatever additional ambulance revenues that we get and things like that. And you have to remember, it's like obviously as the more we're using the vehicles, the more mileage we get reimbursed on the ambulance charges. Obviously, the number of runs, we get reimbursed for that. And, you know, the EMS is accounted for in a special revenue fund, so it's a separate fund. And so even if that equipment replacement account falls short, we have about $372,000 in reserves in the EMS fund that would cover any shortages that account might have.
Okay.
And that's the reason why we kind of account for it separately.
Okay, so going back to the fire side of your projections, Chief, 2026, you're looking at 1.8 million for a fire truck, and I'm probably going to ask a question that I know you can't answer, but we've seen what's happening with the ambulance services in the areas as they're faltering. Are we going to start seeing the same thing with some of the volunteer fire departments? And I guess kind of what I'm getting at is, how many ladder trucks are in the area? I mean, are these services that we're going to have to start looking at possibly combining with some of the smaller communities?
It sure is a possibility. I mean, I can't tell you what success volunteers in the area are having as far as personnel. I can tell you that across the nation, you know, more people and more people are not wanting to get involved with, you know, those types of organizations without talking personally to each of them. But it's not unfeasible to you know, combine and share resources like that. That's true. I mean, I don't know personally, I don't know why we have, 3 ladders within 30 miles of each other. Should be at least 2, I mean, there could be the well-resourced for it, but realize too, each one of those uses it for different types of events also. I mean, the rural departments use their ladders for silos and silo fires and large barns, It's something that wasn't ever available before, so it's a necessary tool for them also. So I think your biggest challenge is gonna be where do you place the 1 or 2? That's the biggest challenge, In the city, it's dependent upon size of structures, it would be necessary to meet the NFPA standards. With the mill down, that could change, but if the mill gets running again, that was our largest structure in the city, right? So now our largest structure that's occupied is probably that 4-story elderly housing complex. A lot of life safety there, though.
Well, again, I'm not asking you to predict the future, but, I mean, we're 3 years out from that budget, and is it something that we should start considering and maybe discussing now?
It's probably not a bad idea. Like I said, we pushed that off twice already. Red Power Diesel told us it would be, hitting that maximum at that point, so.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we'll move on to Chief Pataki.
All right, page 1, basically like Todd had alluded to earlier, it's kind of out of my control. That's all done by finance. And the first 4, office supplies, forms, printing, postage, and copy cost, all remain status quo. Are there any questions in reference to page 1? Okay, page 2.
But Mike, hold on a second, sorry. So overtime, I guess I'm kind of picking on overtime. As we did with the fire department, is additional staffing, would that reduce that overtime, or what's your biggest driver on overtime?
The biggest driver, I think, right now is mental health.
Is it?
So we spend a lot of time it's called a Chapter 51. That's when someone has a mental health crisis. We are required by law, we have to go take them into custody. Now the new process is we have to take them down to the emergency room, they have to be medically cleared. The problem we have with the medical clearance is the hospital, 9 times out of 10, is in no hurry to get us in and out of the hospital. We become a low priority to them for whatever reason, and so our officers have to sit down there. If they're under Chapter 51, we have to maintain custody of them, because if they are to get out of the hospital and hurt themselves, that becomes our liability. So we have to have an officer sit down there with them for the whole time that they're being medically cleared. We also have to deal with Norwood, so the doctor at the ER completes all of his tests, he contacts Norwood. The Norwood doctor can say, well, I want 6 more tests done, which could take another 6 to 8 hours depending on what those tests are and availability of people to do them. Once we get done at the ER, then if we're lucky, we get to transport them to Norwood, which is in Marshfield, which is a short transport. More and more, Norwood is full. So then what happens is it's Norwood's responsibility to find us an alternate hospital, mental health hospital, to take these people to. And a lot of times we're going to Madison, Eau Claire, Oshkosh. So that's another 4 to 8 hour for a trip driving a guy there or driving him there and back. So right now, mental health it's just killing us in our overtime budget. That is probably one of the main drivers in the overtime budget. And there's really nothing we can do about it. Any other questions, concerns? Okay, page 2. The first one is the maintenance agreement. What that is, it's the Axon body and squad cameras. So that is a contract that was agreed upon by the previous chief, and we don't have a say in that. So this year, it's $16,074. And that is for the maintenance of all the equipment, for the body cams and for the squad cameras. In that agreement, anything that's damaged, they replace free of charge. If we have a problem with the camera system, they send someone out to come and fix it. But like I said, that is a contract that was agreed to by the previous chief, and that is what the agreement was the $16,000. The next couple are status quo. Computer supplies, small tools and equipment went down roughly $1,800, and the reason for that is last year we had to purchase several PBTs that needed replacement. What that is, it's a preliminary breath test. So that's a little thing that you see when people get arrested for drunk driving, and the cop says blow on this, and it gives us an initial reading on what they would be at for their blood alcohol content. And we had to replace quite a few last year, so this year we didn't need to replace those, so that's why that went down. Range supplies also went down. We've the last couple of years, we've been stockpiling because of the ammo shortage. We wanted to make sure that we did have ammo. Obviously, as a police department, that's something that's pretty important. The ammo is starting to come back. It's more available. So we determined we did not need as much to purchase as much ammo this year, so that's why that dropped. Telephone, internet, so that's status quo. Subscriptions and membership, status quo. Training and education, that is an important for all officers. The average police training costs anywhere from $300 to $600 per training per officer. We are required by law to have, every officer has to have 24 hours of recertification per year. Obviously, we try to go above and beyond what the minimum is, and that's why I remained with the $40,500, because we want to keep our officers trained. We have not a young department, so a lot of the young officers need to have the training. Yep.
So is this all your training, or is this just outside training? I know you guys do a lot of in-house training. Is that all covered in this?
Yes, this is all training.
Okay.
Yes. Communications is radio and system maintenance. Our squad radios, portable radios, we have knobs break, we have computer chips inside them go bad. That is what that is for. It covers the care and maintenance of our radio and our system. Education reimbursement, that went up $4,000. That is for their continuing education. So that would be like an associate or a bachelor's degree. That is a contractual item, so that went up $4,000. No control over that. Time system, that is the computer system that we use through the state to run driver's licenses and people's information. That is a fee set by the state, so we have no control over that. Crime Stoppers, that's kind of a status quo because that is an annual subscription, and we have to have X amount of money in there in regards to if people come and do a Crime Stoppers report and it ends up in arrest, they give an award to those people. Patrol and unmarked squads, what that is, the $105,000 and the $20,000 is the maintenance for patrol cars and unmarked squads. So that would be tires, brakes, any maintenance that we have on the vehicles, gasoline, all that stuff falls under those two areas. And it's so hard to narrow it down. The Fords that we had were terrible. The water pumps would go out at 60,000 miles on every squad. Right around 60 to 65,000 miles, the water pumps would go out like clockwork. And then at like 42,000 miles, the catalytic converter would go out. So we have moved away from the Ford Explorers, and we're trying to move to the Dodge Durangos, which seem to have better life expectancy. We've had a couple now for a couple years, and we've had zero problems with them besides regular maintenance. So we're trying to move away from the Fords. They've just been very problematic since 2020. Clothing allowance, that went up. That's a contractual issue for the boot allowance. Uniforms stayed the same. We're going to have some hiring coming up, and we got to buy the new hirees' uniforms and maintain the current officers' uniforms. Dry cleaning went up $2,000. We have 5 detectives that originally were not washing their clothes. Through a grievance process, it had been determined that they should have been allowed to wash their clothes. So that is for the reason for the $2,000 jump there is because we now have 5 more people that are able to get their clothes laundered at the dry cleaner. City Hall rental, I have no control over. Safety physicals and community policing remain the same. Investigations dropped down $8,600, and the reason for that is last year we purchased some special equipment for the investigators. We purchased a new camera, a new zoom lens for drug investigation and photos of evidence. We also purchased some trackers last year for the drug detectives. They put these trackers on vehicles so that they know where they are and they can monitor these people that they're doing investigations on. So that's why we had a savings of $8,600. Special response team. The jump of $17,219 is special response team is like the SWAT team. They wear the heavy vests. The vests that they have are all coming due. The DOJ and the manufacturers have a expiration date of 5 years per vest. That's for a tactical vest and for the patrol vest. The extra $17,000 would be to purchase, well, it's actually $25,000.67 to purchase 10 SRT heavy vests. They all came due at the same time. We used to have them on a rotation, but the last chief got a deal on some vests, so he purchased them all at once, and at this point, they're all coming due at the same time. So for officer safety, we need to purchase the new vest for the special response team. Lexapol is our policy. They generate our policies. They send out daily training bulletins for the officers. So the officers every day, they get a daily training bulletin in regards to certain policies. They read through that. They have to answer that question or scenario correctly in order to move on. And then they keep a running update on our policies because the laws change so fast. And if we had to do it internally, it would be a full-time job for an officer for their whole year. It would be very tedious. So that's $11,000 for that. The K-9 program went up $2,000 because we had a vendor that was donating all the food for both of our canines. That vendor decided to stop doing that. So we reached out to multiple vendors, and the best we could do was one vendor said that after we buy 4 bags, they'll give us a bag free. So that is the $2,000 increase there because we have to buy food for 2 canine units that we didn't have to purchase before it was all donated. Any questions on anything on that page? All right, capital outlay. Okay, item number 1 is ballistic vests. Now, these are different than the heavy vests that the special response team wears. The ballistic vests are just the duty vests like I'm wearing. That is for the patrol officers. We replace those on a 5-year rotation also, as mandated by DOJ and the vest companies. And we are going to have to replace approximately 11 vests next year for a cost of $15,400. The federal government has been reimbursing us approximately 50% of that cost, but it's not guaranteed. So that might be cut in half, depending on if the federal government continues their program that they're offering where they pay 50% of the cost of the vest for officers. Mobile radios, that is replacement of 4 mobile radios at $4,695 per unit. Those are on an 8-year replacement cycle. So there are 4 units that are up for replacement. Also replacing 1 squad radio at a price of $5,209, which is also on an 8-year rotation, for the total of $18,781. 5 years or 8 years is about all we get out of them. Otherwise, we're paying to replace parts and pieces, and it just, the technology advances. So it's the 8-year rotation. We can't really go much longer than that. Vickers slings, what those are 2-point slings that would be on all the AR rifles that are in the squad cars, in the detective cars. What that is when the officers get out on a call and they need the use of the rifle, they are able to sling the rifle. So an example would be they have it slung, they're doing something, the gun malfunctions. We don't want to take that gun and set it on the ground or do something with it. We want it to stay with the officer so they can drop that gun and they can transition to their pistol. And that's the reason why we want to go with all of these Vickers slings to put on our rifles. So if there is a malfunction with the weapon, if they need to go hands-on with someone, we don't want them taking the rifle and setting it on the ground. It needs to be kept on their person. And that Vickers slings, or the Vickers slings, allows that to occur. The First Defense OC spray, that is the OC canisters that we have. They are all coming due within probably 6 months. So the $560 will replace all of the OC canisters for all the officers, and we'll leave some spares in case if it gets used, we'll have spares, or if we hire new officers. The UPS repeater batteries, what that is, Todd, you probably didn't even know about this. The UPS repeater batteries, it's an uninterrupted power source. Luckily, we had a problem with one of our repeaters, and I went out there with our radio company, and they advised me that the batteries that we had were at the end of their life. Otherwise, we had no idea. So we have to replace, I believe it's 27 batteries at $66 per piece for $1,780. What those do is, for police and fire, our repeaters systems, if we have a power failure, we have a generator that kicks in, but for them 2 to 3 seconds in between there, we would have a loss of power and no radio communications. What these batteries do is they maintain that power throughout the turning on and cycling of the generator. So those need to be replaced this year. Defense Technologies, what that is all of our, basically anything that we would use for a riot or a barricaded subject would be the gas, OC, CS, less lethal munitions, stuff like that. All of that stuff has an expiration date, so we replace that on a cycle, and a lot of it, again, is coming due, so you can't use it after the expiration, so we need to purchase new stuff. That's one of those things that it sits on the shelf, and you don't need it till you really need it. And when you really need it, you really need it. So, and then encrypted radio channels. What that is right now, anytime we have a drug investigation or a SRT SWAT call out, our radio channels are not encrypted. So when we're talking on the radio, if the bad guy's got a scanner, he can hear everything we're saying outside his house, which to me is a huge officer safety issue. An encrypted channel, what that is it's digitally voice protected. So once you turn that channel on, you can't hear it in scanner land. So what it does is they can't hear what we're doing and communications that we're having. So that would be used for the SRT team and also for our drug detectives when they're doing drug buys and following people around and stuff like that. It would be an encrypted channel so people can't listen into what's going on. And the reason why I don't think it's come up in the past is we finally have all of our radios transitioned to the point where we can put an encrypted channel in there. Prior to this, we had some radios that you couldn't do that. But now we have all the equipment that we can now do an encrypted channel. So that it's $500 per channel to purchase an encrypted channel. Any questions on department outlay? Done. Okay, department replacement fund, that's our squad cars. So we'll be purchasing two patrol cars and one detective car. Those are $37,152. They actually went up $4,000 from last year to this year. I think what's going on is the companies are realizing that they can make money on the personal vehicles with the chips, because of shortage of chips. So what just blows my mind is I got a call from Johnson & Sons, where we purchase our vehicles from, and they told me you have a 3-hour window on Monday to order your cars. If you don't order them, then you're not getting any cars. I got a call from Belco, which is the company we ordered the Fords through, was the same thing. You have a 4-hour window on Tuesday. If you don't order them, you're not getting any cars. So I think the manufacturers are realizing that they don't make any money on these vehicles. They give them to us basically for cost. And they're learning, they're like, why are we giving this away when we can sell a car and make X amount of money? It's hard to say. It really, I was told to order them. I got the okay from Shane to order them about a month ago, and we'll be lucky if we get them by the end of next year. So it's just, I never thought in my career I would ever have to say we can't get, and this is nationwide. I don't know what big cities are doing.
I have one question. So I see that it says Ford Explorer, but you were just talking that you're getting away from the Fords and you're going to the Dodges. Am I
Yes.
reading that correctly?
The reason I did that is because, or the reason that the Fords are in there is because we were told that we were not going to be able to get the Dodges. When I made my budget, they told us right out there, like, you're not going to be able to get the Dodges. So that's why I put in the prices for the Fords. But the prices for the Dodges are, I think, within $100 of this.
Okay, thank you.
But that was the reason for that. They told us no pickups because we would like to get another Ram pickup truck, and no Durangos. But like I said, then he called me up. He's like, you got a 2-hour window to do this. So that's why I said, okay, if I can get the Durangos, I'll go with the Durangos.
And just one question. I know I get calls all the time, so I just want you to say it. Obviously, cars are more fuel efficient than SUVs. And I know a lot of the police departments, sheriff's departments, everyone's going towards SUVs. Can you explain why?
Because we can't fit prisoners in the small cars nowadays. We used to have the Ford sedans, like the Ford Taurus. And for one, I'm 6'2". Me trying to get in and out of that car, I'm breaking my neck. And once you put a cage in there, there is such little amount of room in the back seat that if you get any decent-sized person, you can't fit them in there. So that's why everyone's going to SUVs, because they're just, the cars nowadays are just too small.
Thank you.
And that also includes the amount for disassembly and assembly of squads. So when we purchase a new squad, we have to take an old squad in, they disassemble it, we bring a new squad in, and they put the equipment in there. What's actually nice about that is usually it costs us between $12,000 and $13,000 per car, but now we have the equipment purchased for these vehicles, and the Ford stuff transitions into the Dodge. So we can take a lot of the stuff that we have in the Fords now, and we can put into the new Dodge vehicles. It's all interchangeable. The only thing that really isn't interchangeable is the front brush guard. So that's why the price of that has come down. And the decals. So for the 2 patrol vehicles, it would cost us $700 each to get them decaled. Any questions, other questions on the police department vehicles? Emergency communications, basically what that is like the sirens around town, the storm sirens. So the police department is charged with maintaining those. So that's what the $4,000 and $4,000 is for that. In case something goes on one of those sirens, we need to pay to replace that. And also the equipment maintenance, the $500, that is for the people to come and replace anything that is worn out or damaged. Water and light, that is out of my control. The auxiliary police unit, that is a 13-person unit that assists the police department. They are non-sworn officers. They are uniformed, and they save us a lot of overtime. They help out in many events, 4th of July, anything like that. They assist officers, so we can send one officer out with an auxiliary officer instead of having 2 officers together. They'll come in on, if we have a bad crash, they'll come in, direct traffic. They basically are a bunch of volunteer people that come in and assist us when we need assistance with anything, and they're not a paid unit. What the $6,000 is that pays for their uniforms because they are uniformed, pays for training because they teach them how to direct traffic, and stuff like that. So they're a very, very useful unit, and we do appreciate them a lot. They help us out quite a bit. I think that's it. No. Crossing guards. So the crossing guards fall under the police department also. The first section there, again, that is out of my control. That's budgeted by finance. They do get paid, so that is their wages and benefits and stuff like that. Training and education is $500. When we get a new crossing guard, we have to train them on how to do it, and we want to make sure they're CPR certified and stuff like that. We do buy them uniforms, jackets, and stuff for winter, so that's what the $600 is for, and then they get safety shoes. And then $700 for supplies. That would be like stop signs that they hold up when they're crossing kids and stuff like that. And those are getting harder and harder to get people to volunteer for that too. Any questions in regards to the crossing guards? Any questions on anything?
Thank you for your time. The overtime, going back to chapter 51, is there any percentage basis of like how much of the 200,000 or the overtime cost goes into chapter 51 versus the rest of it, or not?
I do not have those numbers, and it all depends on the year. When COVID was here, it was really bad. So I did not break that down. I'm sorry. I do not have those numbers.
Yeah, I don't. It's not necessarily that I was thinking more off the top of your head in terms of, is it, if we're paying that much out, is it the case for having a mental health officer that could fill that position to take, so that we're not taking the active officers off of the street, or, I mean, it just sounded like that was 90% of the overtime that we were paying for, which would be 100.
No, I wouldn't say 90. I would say 40. 40 to 45%. But it's very time consuming. The other overtime issues, there is a page on there. Call-ins, chapter 51s, community involvement. Court time is another big one. That's something that we have no control over. So when the officers make an arrest, there's a court process. Or the officers have to show up for a prelim. They have to show up if there's a hearing, if there's a motion hearing. They have to show up for all that stuff. That's out of our control. They get a subpoena, they have to show up.
And that's a specific officer anyways, correct?
Correct.
Like
Yeah.
nobody could take their place or anything like that?
No.
With the chapter 51 though, that could be, I'm just throwing stuff at the wall here, that could be a specific officer that's in charge of that, or does it have to be a somebody who answers the call, or how does that work?
Usually it's a person whose beat it's in. So we have 4 beats. So if the person that is in crisis is in, let's say, beat 51, the person that's assigned to beat 51 would take care of that complaint.
So what happens to that beat when they're tied up in the
It gets
hospital?
covered by another officer.
Overtime?
No.
No?
No. Usually it's covered by the remaining officers that are on shift. Where we run into the overtime is beyond his workday. Then we start running into an overtime issue.
So it basically can go all night until the
Yeah,
job's done?
I mean, we've sat with people down at the hospital for over 24 hours.
Okay.
It's ridiculous, to be totally honest with you. It is just, and nobody's in a hurry.
Yeah. Have there been options talked about in terms of what we could do to make that a better situation for the police
We've-
department, or no?
Yeah, we've been working with the hospitals. We have what's called a yellow sheet. So if we have somebody that's cooperative and they want help, then we take them down there, and what we do is we have a yellow sheet. So we fill it out, put all the information on it, and we talk to the ER staff and say, okay, this person is fine. When you're done with the medical clearance, give us a call back and we'll come and get them. But if the person is at all a no person and is not cooperative, the hospital will not allow us to leave, and we can't leave because they're in our custody. If they get hurt, it falls on us. So we are trying to save time using the yellow sheets. We are having a meeting coming up this next week with the head of crisis, Peter Kassenholz, who takes care of all the Chapter 51s, and the people from Norwood, to try and get this streamlined a little bit. It almost seems like in some of the meetings, crisis and Mr. Kassenholz aren't on the same page with some things and didn't realize kind of stuff was going on. So we're trying to get this all straightened out, streamlined as quick as we can. But it still falls to the fact that once we take them into custody, they're our responsibility till we walk them into that hospital. And we can't not take care of them.
Okay.
So we're trying, but mental health is a drain on every department right now.
I mean, have there been talks about how to handle mental health differently than, because I'm assuming the sheriff's department is facing the same thing. They
Yeah,
have
I
a
mean-
mental health person.
Yeah, everybody is. He's more, the mental health officer for Wood County is more of he's in the training part of it. He doesn't really do the transports and stuff like that. That still falls back on their patrol officers. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to educate people. He's trying to build relationships with some of these people so that if they are in crisis, they can call him instead of calling the police department and getting chaptered.
Okay.
So that's what they're trying to work on there.
Has this grown? As it always? You said in COVID it went up, but was it? Obviously, it was there before that.
Yes.
Or is it growing quickly right now because it's
growing-
being more talked about in?
It's growing, yes, quickly now.
So is there a lot of things that this mental health was, but it wasn't termed mental health back in the day, and now it's more things are being kind of lumped into that
Definitely.
category?
Yes. And people they were ashamed to bring it forward, where now more people are talking about it, they feel comfortable about it. So when they feel that they're in crisis, they call us, where before a lot of people didn't.
So is it still just being dumped on the police station versus, I mean, it could grow into, I don't want to say another department, but It could
Well,
grow into
that-
a separate
That has been
entity.
brought up to have a mental health department, but the problem we have is, it would be handled through social services or human services. The problem we have with is the yes person can turn into a no person this quick,
Mm.
and then all of a sudden they're beating up the people that are there to help them. So
Well,
that's why,
assuming, yeah,
that's why a lot of it is on the police department, is because we go there, we handle them as long as they're a yes person, we're fine. But when they change to a no person, we have the tools to be able to take care of that, where the human services people don't. So that's why it keeps falling back in our lap, because they don't, when you have the no person, they can't control them. They don't have the authority, they don't, we have the authority to physically take someone into custody, they don't have that authority. So that's why they call us. But yeah, it
it'd
is
be
a-
interesting to see.
It is a
Yeah.
growing problem, and it has been discussed for the last 5 years very heavily, and they are trying to look at a different,
Model.
different department that can take care of this stuff, do the transports, stuff like that, and take it away from law enforcement, because we're spending so much time doing it.
Mm.
But it's so hard, because you have to have the law enforcement part of it, so in case it goes bad, you're able to handle whatever happens.
So it could end up becoming more like a hybrid between health.
It could,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Anyways, I don't want to go too far.
Yep.
In a whole different direction. I appreciate your time. For Tim, with the outlay, when we talk about the outlay, is that, I don't see that within the budget. So that is money that's set aside, or we're being asked to put that outlay into the budget on top of the operating and wages?
Yeah, for the police department, their vehicle replacement account, because they're turning over the patrol cars every 2 years, it's basically budget for the replacement of those every year, and that's included in the budget.
So we're being asked to put it in, and it's going into
Correct.
a separate fund, but it's part of the,
Yeah. Yes,
like for the police or fire, it was 4.8, but that outlay is part of that. That's gonna be redirected into that fund.
correct, yes.
Okay. But then for the, I know we talked a little bit, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of going back to fire a little bit here, to the station number 2 upgrade. That's really completely separate than any of the budget stuff, correct?
Right. What Chief Eckes referenced in his departmental budget is not included in the budget. He was basically just communicating that there's some contingency funds, when we signed the contract and appropriated the money for the station number 1 renovation, there was a contingency amount that they built into any of this, that they anticipate about $70,000 to $80,000 will be unspent in that, and Chief Eckes just is saying that he would like those funds put into station number 2 for the renovation, plus the difference of $40,000 he's requesting that come out of the ARPA funds. But as of now, it's not structurally built into the budget at this time.
It's not, so we'll talk about it again in the
Correct.
future? We're just bringing it up now?
Basically, once we get that final number, we final out with Myron, and we know exactly what that number is, and we can have that discussion.
Okay, so the increase in the operating budget, wages and all that, so from what I understand, the levy being what it is, stationary levy limits, when we go up 4.1%, and I'm not gonna find it. Oh, whatever. But the police and fire both went up a certain percentage. Where does that come from? If the levy limits don't go up,
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's going to come from, 1 or 2 sources. It's if the levy can't go up to support the increases in wages and benefits, it's either got to come from other revenue sources or other expenditure reductions.
okay, so where, like right now, it's just in there. Is that something you are able to, with your ability to look at numbers, on a continuous basis? Are you able to figure out how to?
Well,
back
I
and
mean, one of
forth,
the factors that's aiding in the 2023 budget is obviously we're in a, our investment rates have gone up. So our investment earnings, what I'm estimating, have gone up significantly based on the prior year. So in the prior year was around 150,000. I'm estimating about $475,000 in additional investment earnings. So that's going to help fund some of those inflationary increases, whether it be material costs or wages and benefits.
and that's part of our overall revenue.
Correct.
But that's not. We make this was a good year. You're saying, or last year was a good
Well,
year. or-
because we're in a rising investment rate, we've had years where, but it also can hold true in years when investment rates are coming down, that revenue will come down. It's just that this year, we're in, investment rates have gone up, and, we have a laddered portfolio, looking out 3 to 5 years, so we're able to take, advantage of some of those investment rates long-term, and we use that, and that's kind of one of the funding sources for our budget. And this year, it's obviously a critical part of that, because obviously when your levy can go up $84,000, that's not going to support a 3% or 2.75% increase in your wages for, the entire, employee base.
Have you heard? Speaking of the investment going up, have you got wind that if we choose to borrow money this year, that's going up considerably also?
Well, obviously, that's the counter to that.
Right.
As investment rates go up, obviously, the interest on debt will also go up, which, obviously will increase our interest costs on a borrowing issue.
So it would. Does it offset each other? Does it offset each other, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, in a way, it does. I mean, obviously, we have a healthy fund balance, and obviously that generates an income, obviously that in investment earnings, but also on that does, as investment rates go up, that'll help counter, what happens on the debt service side as, debt rates go up, interest rates go up on debt.
Okay.
But that's also why we are, hate to say, only $470,000 short, because
Right.
without that investment income, we could be $1 million short.
That is correct. I mean, the thing is, yeah, I mean, over time, obviously, as the investment, interest rate environment goes, so it goes that, revenue source. So as that goes up, it's obviously, fills that hole. I'm rather conservative with my projections because I can't tell what investment rates are going to be next year, but, I can kind of look at some of that are fixed in, and one of them is the LGIP, which, I have to kind of estimate, but, so I kind of like to smooth that out so I don't get overly aggressive with my investments, but also on the downside, I play the same, kind of approach that, as investment rates come down, I try to be, so it kind of smooths it over time so that we don't get a significant reduction or addition in any one given year. But obviously, over the past year, investment rates have gone up significantly. We're looking at, look at the local government investment pool. It's by the state of Wisconsin. Not too long ago, they were paying, 10 basis points. Now they're at over 2%, so those have gone up, which is generating, even for this year, we're going to come in over budget, which is a good thing on the revenue side because those investment rates have escalated. So, and so that will help fund any overages we have, or it'll create some surplus that we, might be able to apply towards something.
Thank you.
Kedrick?
I have a question about the training. You've listed out all the training that you guys do in here, and in it I can't see anything with like a dementia training. Okay, do you guys do dementia training, and how that relates with our residents? We do have a aging population, and with aging obviously comes a lot of different types of dementia and stuff, and there are situations that the police are called in to homes with people with dementia, do you guys do training like that? And if so, how much do you do a year?
Yes, it's not specifically dementia training, it's called CIT, Crisis Intervention Training. And what that is they kind of loop all the mental health issues together and teach us how to interact with people that are in crisis. So our whole department, except the one new person that just got hired, we are all CIT trained. So that is a week-long course that we go to. It's offered through Midstate. We go through that course, and we actually interact with, they bring in people that have mental illness, and we get to role play with them, and they give us a lot of feedback on how they feel and why they feel the way they feel, and how, you know, law enforcement, when we come in, usually we have a different mindset. We had to retrain ourselves on how to deal with people in crisis, because we go in there and we're always thinking safety. You know, we come in, we have to take control, stuff like that. When someone's in mental health crisis, you don't want to do that because you can escalate them very quickly. So you have to come in, you have to talk to them calmly, you have to, you know, it's a total different approach than what cops were used to. So yes, all of our people have gone to that week-long training, and they don't really offer an update on it yet. This is fairly new, the CIT stuff. We just, I think it was last year, we finally got all of our officers trained in it. So I'm hoping that eventually they're gonna come up with like continual training on it.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you guys are at least doing something. I would like to see something more specifically with dementia and as it relates to dementia patients and how to relate with them. And that's, I don't know if the ADRC would have something like that, but for me personally, I think especially with our aging population that we have here in Wisconsin Rapids, that would be both beneficial to the police officers as well as the residents. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sherry, do you have something?
No, thank you.
Mayor?
I guess since we're talking about staffing a little bit tonight, and I'll pull Tim in on this question, but in your time here, I think about my time even back then, your staffing levels have remained flat, maybe except for a community resource officer, or I mean a school liaison. But you haven't had any addition in officers, crew sizes, anything like that?
I've been here 25 plus years and we have not grown since I started.
And so I guess, part of my, we look at EMS revenue, and I've talked to Tim about this a little bit before, but we don't look at citation revenue, because fines and forfeitures are a very large segment of monies that come into the community also. And that's really not been earmarked for the police. And so as an increase in ambulance revenue justifies the increase of adding additional staff, but we're not doing that in the law enforcement side. I remember in the late 90s, and I'm sure you remembered, there's many times on second shift we'd stack calls. And they just literally, you didn't get to them because you went for your whole shift. And the priority started on less priority calls, you just didn't go. And without staffing changes, I can't see that not happening yet to this day, that there's times that you're plenty busy and there's calls that just have to sit and wait. And we're not doing anything to really look at our law enforcement numbers, and the call volume, like you said, the mental health illness things. And, I don't know if it's something that we need to start doing or looking at doing it, is, that citation revenue and kind of monitoring that every year, because that would help justify it adding additional officers, or, looking at, because we don't see your call volumes and your run volumes either. And I guess I'll publicly say I don't think you're doing a good job selling yourself on how busy you guys are and have been.
Okay, I'll agree with you there. We are busy, but I don't
Mhm.
feel
No.
that it is a good practice. You don't want
No,
money
you don't want,
generated
right.
from citations. Like, if you write more tickets, we're gonna get more people. That is not a good thing. That's unethical.
Yeah, but you might see people in the community here wanting to be out there writing more citations because of the violations going on out there. I hear it all the time. We don't write enough speeding tickets. in the
I understand
community.
what you're saying, but I
but-
don't think
Mhm.
you want to use the citations.
But it's a metric you can use to gauge how busy you are.
Yes.
Not whether or not, hey, everybody write another 100 citations this year because be able to get more officers. But it's a metric you can use to, kind of show how busy you are.
Yes. I would
We
agree.
kind of really don't watch those numbers or, a call volume or run volume, calls per day. Like, the fire department's doing calls per day now on EMS and fire calls. We don't really highlight that at the police department, because I know the police chief last year wanted more officers, but there was really there was no salesmanship on addressing calls, what's going on, why we need more officers. It was just kind of like, we need more officers in that meeting. And, I think there needs to be a better metrics or trying to sell yourself better on how busy you are and what you guys are handling. Just a thought, not a response or a request in there, but
Right.
something to look at.
Okay.
Anybody else? Ryan? Anybody? Thank you. And that pretty much concludes.
So you were emailed the dates and the budget's kind of going on those dates. If there's a budget you want to see in there, or hey, we need another budget or another committee the whole night because we want to see X, Y, and Z budget also, just let us know. We can get that set up. Thank you.
Okay, well then, do I have a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.